You feel like there's not enough time to get everything done that you need to get done. You could be wrong about that. Time management next on City Corner. Hi, I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. There's Not Enough Time and Other Lies We Tell Ourselves. That's the title of a new book by Jill Farmer, who joins us today. Hi, Jill. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Steve.
So is this a universal lie that we all tell ourselves?
Well, it is. It feels like gospel truth to most of us in our lives because we feel like we are so busy and we have so many things we need to get done, and there never seems to be enough time to do it or enough time to really do the things in life that we think we want to do to create the life we want to have. And it's certainly something that I believed through much of the last 40 plus years, but recognizing that really it's not necessarily the truth that we give it the credit and the weight that it is. It can be really a powerful revelation.
Well, see, I would think this would not be true for successful people because, gee, successful people, they must know what they're doing. They must balance their time correctly. And
well, I think what successful people sometimes tend to be better at than other folks who feel like they're scrambling on that hamster wheel and spinning and can never get off. Or that they learn that fight or flight mode that we're in when we believe that there's not enough and we're kind of resisting the reality of the 24 hours we have every single day. The people who tend to be more successful recognize that fight or flight mode is not a good place for which to achieve success. We don't have a lot of cognitive ability there. It's not a place to be creative. It's not a place to problem solve, to resource gather, to possibility harvest. So being able to shift ourselves out of that fight or flight mode that we automatically get thrown into just by simply believing the thought there's not enough time is a really powerful practice.
yeah. Is it a fine line, though? Don't we need to be a little scared to get things accomplished?
No, the brain research says no. That's the way that we have lived most of our lives, is that if I'm a little in that reaction, it is a fabulous way to survive. It's a fabulous way by perceiving threats all around us. It's a great way to survive. It is a terrible way to thrive. So if your goal is just to survive, then you should constantly focus on perceived threats and shortages. If you want to thrive, you have to sort of evolve to that next level and be willing to change your vista, so to speak, to shift your perspective, to shift your mindset, which is what this is really about, to looking at a different way of doing things.
We're going to talk about your personal story a little bit more in the second part of the show, but you have a background as you've been a TV reporter, an anchor, which you haven't done for a while. But didn't this book come about sort of because of what was going on in your own life?
Completely, because of what was going on in my own life. Because I kept changing externally the circumstances. I kept waiting for this jackpot or windfall, if you will, of a magical, leprechaun was going to wave a wand and I was going to end up with all this time in the next phase, or when this happens, then I'll have enough time to do it. And the circumstances in my life kept changing. And I still found myself feeling overwhelmed and frenzied and unsure of what in the heck I was accomplishing at the end of every day, even though I felt completely exhausted and depleted. I quit working in what some people would have considered sort of the height of my career as an Emmy Award-winning journalist because I felt like I needed time to become the wife and the mother and the human being and the citizen I wanted to be. And it was a little bit of a painful awakening for me when I got home. And I still, after 6 months of making that huge life change, felt like I was overwhelmed and frenzied and didn't have any real connection to accomplishment or meaning in my life.
Right, so just getting rid of the job you thought was the problem did not solve the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you talk about, in your book, about being a reporter, and I guess, and you thought, well, if I'm an anchor, I'll have more time.
Right, exactly.
Talk about that whole philosophy there.
Well, there was, again, it was that always that future circumstance was going to bring me that magical windfall that I dreamed of. So when I was in college, it was, I'm going to get my first real job, and then I'll have nights and weekends off. Well, of course, as I entered what I like to call the whitewater rapids of my first television newsroom, I discovered that there wasn't a lot of extra time laying around. And from there, it was going to be, well, I'm a reporter, and reporters have to work a lot harder, and anchors have time to microwave popcorn at their desk and reapply their makeup, for gosh sakes.
Right.
That's really the place I want to be. And then I ended up moving into an anchor position and realizing that the stakes were higher, that I didn't really want to have to mess with my hair and makeup all the time. So again, then I was waiting for the next circumstance, and so it went, and so it went.
Well, did it matter whether you're at work or at home? Was it worse when you got home? I mean, at work, you were the busy reporter. At home, you were a wife and a mom.
And I found myself completely unable to experience any moment that I was in. I was constantly projecting forward into what needed to happen next, or ruminating about the past, about what should have happened differently. And it kind of hit me when I was at that, what I like to call my rock bottom point. I also like to say J.K. Rowling says rock bottom is a fabulous place for which to rebuild ourselves, and I think that was my experience. But when I was at that low point, I recognized that that there's so much more out there when I just give myself the gift of recognizing it's not all about wishing my life away, wanting things to be different in either the past or the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's something we all do, you say, right? But don't you think that, didn't you feel like you were the only one?
Yeah, I looked around exactly what that old, for the old Saturday Night Live fans in the audience, that Stuart Smalley line, compare and despair. And yeah, I was comparing and despairing a lot.
Everyone else has got it together but
right,
me.
everyone else is organized. And some people do have more genetic propensity to be organized. Some people are hardwired to just sort of feel like, yeah, there's enough time and it's all going to get done. A lot of us tend to create subconsciously patterns for ourselves where we force ourselves to get stuff done from that sort of white-knuckled, not enough space. And usually something else in terms of our health, well-being, relationships to others gets sacrificed, even if we are managing somehow to get stuff done in that space.
We say some of us are better at this time management than others. What does it have to do with this intelligence?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, because we all have vast amounts of intelligence. Some people just have a higher tolerance for putting things off until the last minute. Some people have a higher degree of engagement in whatever it is they're doing, so they tend to get so engaged that it's difficult to sort of compartmentalize time. But I would say the bottom line issue for most people that I work with, from executive clients, top surgeons to stay-at-home moms, is that when we try to get stuff done from this foundation of not enough, when we tell ourselves that there's not enough time or that we're too busy or we'll never get it all done, we are causing this automatic brain reaction. It's, I'm not a neurologist, I never played one on TV, but I know that we know from research that when we are in that space, when we're in this fight or flight mode where we're only able to react to things as opposed to respond. And when we're reacting, we're really doing things without thinking. And that's where we make stupid mistakes, where we're inefficient, where we do things that end up costing a lot of time. So I always say our mindset is secretly sabotaging lots of our time.
Uh-huh. But is that something other people notice about us, or is it all internal?
Well, I think sometimes once we start to kind of go down the path of recognizing that when we really get stuff done and when we're really efficient and productive is not in that fight or flight space, but is in that calm, clear, connected space, and once we begin to learn the simple ways that we shift our mindset out of that, other people's kind of that frenzy starts, our internal radar starts to be really reactive to it because we recognize that there's a different way. But yeah, I think, other people can sometimes tell us that about ourselves, but we have to ultimately look inside to make the shift.
So does being this way make us depressed in any way? Here you had a pretty successful career, pretty happy home life as far as I can tell, but all this pressure you're putting on yourself, did it make you unhappy?
Well, yeah, it did make me unhappy, and it didn't manifest for me in depression, but there was certainly anxiety, and I like to say that mean voice in my head was running a pretty loud and unpleasant tape, 24/7. And I just had this gnawing sense underneath it all that I was missing out on this richness and some really amazing things that are happening in this one life that I'd been given to live. And I think it was that sort of space that caused me to turn inward and to take a look and try to figure it out.
Can you have a career then? Can Can you successfully have a busy, full career and not panic?
Yes, most definitely. And I find working with the people, some of the most successful executives and teachers and people that I know have either learned to transcend that frenzied, frenetic fight or flight space that they lived their whole life, or again, for whatever reason, they were born with the ability to be in that all will be well space no matter what.
Well, Jill, one thing I really enjoyed about your book is realizing that I'm not the only one.
Yeah. It just makes us human. It's an automatic response that we have that's designed to keep us safe from physical danger. We perceive a threat, a lack of something, and so we go into that fight, flight, or freeze mode in order to stay safe. It's a great thing when we're in actual physical danger. Mm-hmm. The rest of the time, it actually ends up sabotaging or shortchanging us from experiencing, I think, the things that humans can uniquely experience in this life.
And how often are we in physical danger these days? Most of us, not
very often.
You actually work as a life coach now, and
yeah.
we'll talk more about that later. So is this what you actually help people with?
Yeah, a lot of my work is around overwhelm and time stuff. I work in group settings. I do keynote speeches all over the country about this because I'm passionate about it, because I see that making these fundamental shifts away from time shortage into time abundance gives us a lot more contentment and meaning, and makes us more efficient and productive too, but it also just makes us appreciate more what we have in this life.
Well, we're going to talk more about this time management and how to, I guess, really have a happier life is kind of what it comes down to, right? Jill Farmer is our guest. The book is There's Not Enough Time and Other Lies We Tell Ourselves, and we'll be back right after this.
Watching online videos like this one.
Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. 2 minutes twice a day. They have the time.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
The odds of this daughter of a clergyman spending 11 weeks at #1 on the U.S. singles charts? 1 in 19 million. The odds of going on to win 6 Grammy Awards? 1 in 1.4 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 110. I'm Toni Braxton, and I encourage you to learn the signs of autism at autismspeaks.org.
I'm Steve Potter, and welcome back to City Corner. There's Not Enough Time and Other Lies We Tell Ourselves is just Jill Farmer's a new book. Jill is a certified master life coach, whatever that is, Jill.
Exactly. It is. It means that I have now 2 certifications in training in helping people sort of take wherever they are in life and move forward.
So is there a life coach school somewhere?
Yeah, there's several actually, and certification programs that are as rigorous as being housed at major universities in our country, and also as simple as just taking a course over the internet. So there's a pretty wide breadth.
Well, this is all new to me. I'm sure you're not the only life coach in town. Are there a lot of you?
You know, there are, and it's growing in St. Louis for sure, and there's a cadre of fabulous coaches locally that are really having a big impact here, but just sort of taking off here, where in other parts of the country it's become pretty standard.
Well, so what kind of people come to you?
In my case, mostly people who are dealing with some form of overwhelm or would like a little help with strategizing how to get from where they are to where they want to be. So it ranges. I don't really have a demographic in terms of gender or age. I have people ranging in age from their early 20s to their early 60s, top surgeons to stay-at-home moms, or people just beginning in their careers, which I find incredibly interesting.
Does insurance cover that? I'm just curious.
No, insurance doesn't cover coaching. So
Maybe
it's a
they
little more like personal training. If you think of personal training versus physical therapy, personal training, coaching is kind of taking mentally healthy people and helping them move to the next level.
I almost think insurance should cover it. I think it'd be a
Well,
pretty good thing
I
mentally
think
for people,
so, too.
don't you?
I do.
I don't know.
I do.
just
It
think.
certainly has been extremely helpful for me. I have received great benefits from getting coached.
Well, you're a life coach now, but a lot of people would remember you for years and years of being on television here in St. Louis at Channel 2. For how many years?
From 1993 to 2003, I was the Contact 2 consumer reporter, and I anchored.
There's a young
days.
Jill Farmer now.
That's right. That was from my days in KCCI television in Des Moines, Iowa. I think I was 23 in that picture in 1991. That was working when I first came to Channel 2. Remember the Great Flood of '93? That
Sure
was
do.
out there with photographer Dick Arnold working on the flood coverage, I believe, somewhere in '93 or '94, and that was the last 2 or 3 years of my working career at Channel 2 before I decided to hang it up when I was a mom with 2 kids and anchoring and reporting there.
You did very well for yourself, started as a reporter, became an anchor. I know you did a lot of consumer reporting, won a few awards along the way. I would think that'd be hard to give up, Jill.
You know, it was a great, great experience. And again, the reason I gave it up was sort of on a false premise, because I believed that it was going to help me have more time. In the big picture of my life, it's one of the greatest gifts I had, because I had to sort of go on this journey of self-development and growth. And I think it's allowing me, doing what I'm doing now, to reach a really broad audience. And I'm pretty passionate about helping people create new mindsets around time. So I don't regret anything as that unfolded. And I also have I think I'm lucky in the career that I had, because sometimes people don't leave by their own choice or leave
They never
feeling
do
so positively about it as I did. But I think it was a real gift and a blessing, and I still...
They never leave by their own choice in broadcasting. I think you're the one.
I'm the only one. No, I do know several others as well.
Well, we talked a lot about being overwhelmed and feeling like you never have enough time to do the things that you need to do. So I'm curious, do people like that attract that sort of people to them? You have a husband, so I'm curious, did your husband have the same traits or not?
No, he doesn't. And I think he's one of those people that was more naturally wired toward recognizing, hey, you know, there is enough time because there's 24 hours in the day. Kind of the old saying that you've heard in different forms that, you know, Leonardo da Vinci and William Shakespeare and Albert Einstein had the same 24 hours in their day that we all have in ours.
Right.
And what are you doing with yours? And so I think... no, I think he's got a little bit of a different preset in terms of time than I did, and that was a gift to me.
Does that
I
cause
sort of was like,
friction?
I want what he's got.
Does that cause friction in a relationship? And did you come home and did sometimes they just say, Jill, you know, chill out?
No, sometimes, yeah, but no, he's a really good guy, and he recognized my strengths, which I also brought as well, and I think we've been lucky for more than 20 years to have a pretty complementary relationship.
Well, in your book, There's Not Enough Time. It covers a lot of things. It's really interesting. You talk a lot about to-do lists.
Yeah.
So how do you come down on those exactly?
Well, to-do lists are something that can be wildly useful for people to stay in their lane, is what I like to say, because otherwise we're all over the place. But I find they can also be the source of great self-abuse for people in 2 forms. One is what I call the freestylers, who don't really use an actual written to-do list to kind of keep it all up here. And that's not the way our brains are designed. You know, our brains can hold on to remembering lists of things only until the next distraction comes up and then sort of wipes that working short-term memory clean. And so it can be really difficult to make big forward motion or get big stuff accomplished in your life when you're trying to just sort of keep track of it all up here. On the other side of that are what I like to call to-do list overloaders. And they're people who tend to vomit up every task that they need to have in order to be successful human beings, citizens, wives, husbands, mothers, you name it, uncles, aunts in the world, in order to be good enough onto this piece of paper, which often is really not not a to-do list, it's a diatribe that they call their to-do list, and then have black and white proof at the end of every day that they're pretty inadequate human beings who are never going to get everything done.
It's like, so save the world and buy milk
Yeah.
and everything in between?
Right, exactly. And it's a very, sort of unuseful way to move through life because there's never a sense of completion or a sense of being done. So I teach a way of doing a to-do list that I think helps people move forward and have a sense of accomplishment and grow, but also recognizes that we need to reboot, and we need to give ourselves a time to be done as well.
You talk about shoulders.
Yes. Yeah. And that's one of those things.
S-H-O-U-L-D.
Right. And we talk about shoulding all over ourselves. and it's not a term that I came up with. Anybody who's been in any 12-step program has heard of it. But it really is we're so used to kind of beating ourselves up and not being enough. And when we constantly are telling ourselves we should be better, we should be doing this, we a lot of times are missing out on the good stuff that we are doing.
I have a little problem in my life. I'm almost too embarrassed to mention, but I thought I would anyway.
Here on TV.
Don't tell
Just
it.
between us,
Just
Steve.
between us. Because I thought of you when I was reading your book. I thought this one thing, this issue in I have an issue in my life. I do a lot of things. I get a lot of things done. But I've had a project I started almost a year ago. In my basement, I'll try to make this short. In my basement's a mess. I was going to put like a dressing room, laundry room in my basement. I bought a rug. I had all these plans in my head what I was going to do. Well, then I had a leaky pipe, and it made the rug wet, and it got some mold on it, and one thing led to it. Anyway, it's a year later. And Jill, I beat myself up almost every week thinking, I got to get started on this. I bought some blinds. It's all laying down there in a big mess. What am I doing wrong?
Does it sound like something is there anything about it that feels fun or easy?
The completed project would make my life easier.
Okay, so A, focus on that, on what the sort of end benefit is, and B, figure out how especially the first 1 to 3 steps can be ridiculously easy. Because usually we make it sound like it's got to be a hard, unpleasant, onerous first step in order for it to count. And that causes us subconsciously to be averse to doing anything. Mm-hmm. So we run and hide from it, or we busy ourselves with other things. So if you can just do things that you're not sure are going to have big impact on the overall, but just make those first, particularly 3 steps, ridiculously easy, that's how you go from things feeling really big and overwhelming into letting momentum get rolling.
Well, should I have a to-do list? Should it first be like, get rid of the puddles?
Yeah, I mean, that's, what is a ridiculously easy step? Go grab some towels. And you laugh.
I could do that.
Right, exactly. And then step number 2, take the towels downstairs and put them on the step number 3, take them and put them in the washer. But chances are, once you start doing even those little steps, and then you realize, well, it doesn't have to be me giving up an entire weekend or all of my, every waking moment of free time I have. I can break this up, and that gets rolling, and that's how you get to completion.
Right. I get frustrated, too, if things don't get accomplished right away, and you're just defeating yourself, right?
Right. And so that's where you let yourself have little wins, so to speak, make your accomplishments be in smaller compartments. You
tell an interesting story in your book about a guy. And you mentioned a lot of people in here, and I know you don't use their real names, but I found that interesting too. It must be taken from a lot of people you know in your life and their experiences.
Yeah, and some people said, go ahead and use my real name. Everybody gave me permission.
If you ever want to write about my basement story, feel free. But you tell this one story in the book about a guy whose dad is in his 80s, but he's in really good health, but he's starting to give up on life because he has to slow down and he feels that he has to be busy?
Yeah, that was kind of at the end of the book when we look at sort of the big picture of how sometimes we get addicted to being busy because we believe that, I call it, busyness is our worthometer. I'm only worth something based on how busy I am. And so recognizing that sometimes there can be really deep and powerful meaning, not by, the beginning of that chapter starts with at least a friend of mine asked 10 people in a row how they were, and 10 out of the 10 people said busy or some derivation of busy. And she said, I think we've become it's commonplace. We don't say fine anymore, we just use busy as the main descriptor for how we're living our lives. And what would happen if we dared to not be busy, but instead talk about things beyond our list of things that we're doing?
Yeah, you also talk a little bit about, I think you used yourself for an example of this, a bunch of things that you needed to do, I forget what they were, just tasks and chores, and other things like spend time with my kids or read a book in the shade or something, and you make a good point at the end of your life, which list are you going to be glad you did?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that we should just stop accomplishing anything or doing stuff, but sometimes that fear mind, like you talked about, that little place of fear, will say that unless it's a task that we can cross off the list in that way, it doesn't count. And so I think it's helpful to explore the other stuff and see which more deeply lines up with our values of how we want this big picture to look.
We've just got a couple of minutes left, but I've got so many things I want to ask you about. I love how you talk about emails are the enemy. Because once I read that, I said, she's right. Yeah. She's exactly right. I won't even go into that anymore. But you talk about...
They can be the enemy of focus and engagement if you don't control it.
Yeah, I love how you do it. You pick just a certain... You decide not to react every time you got an email.
Right, you put it in a container.
It's like you'll look at them twice a day or certain times a day, not every time the computer bings. Be distracted and go look at that. Also, you talked about dreaded duties, DDs, and you talked about BBs.
Yeah, the 3 Bs, and that's everything that kind of stops us in our tracks, everything from doing taxes to cleaning toilets. Can I bag it, better it, or barter it? And that just means, am I the only person that can do it? Do I really have to do this? And is there somebody else that can help me out?
So, bottom line, I guess here's my question. Is there always hope?
There's always hope. There is always hope. I have worked with people who have lives and schedules and calendars that would make all of our hearts spin and heads spin. And what we've been able to do in adopting some of these new concepts and new mindsets is have them recognize a new way of, yes, getting stuff done, but in a way that also holds on to their sanity and gets rid of the frenzy and the overwhelm and connects instead to something deeper.
And in conclusion, your book's full of little worksheets and things that people maybe can kind of help them figure out where they stand.
Yeah, so you can actually integrate it and make it really real for you.
Well, I want to thank you for helping me manage the last 30 minutes.
You're very welcome. I loved being here. Thanks, Steve.
Jill Farmer is our guest. Her book is There's Not Enough Time and Other Lies We Tell Ourselves, I guess available at local bookstores and all that. Yeah, Main Street Books in St. Charles, Barnes & Noble, and then Amazon.com online. Jill Farmer, thank you. I feel better already. Good. That's all the time, speaking of time, that we have for City Corner, and we'll see you next time. I'm Steve Potter. Thank you. Bye.